Julian, how you going?
We're live, yeah?
We are. We
How's things,
are.
mate?
Fantastic. Fantastic. Look, the world's certainly done a few somersaults since our last online training session that we did together 30 days ago, hasn't it?
Just a few, mate, yeah.
Yeah. No, so it's interesting out there and yeah, great to connect and collaborate for the session.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a really good one. It's always nice to have very specific focus on this. It's not something we tend to talk too much around contracts and stuff. So yeah, it'd be nice to hear what our special guest has to say, for sure.
Yeah. Fantastic. So we'll be bringing in, just for our audience, our specialised building and construction legal partner, Vincent Berry from Sajen Legal. So he'll be coming into the session to talk everything legal, just to get you guys fully equipped and across the right information. And yeah, excited to have a really robust discussion. We've got an hour together, fair bit of content to work through. The plan is to move pretty quickly. There will be an opportunity to access, a recording, but being on live will get you access to the commentary, and also the comments. So, Julian, do you just want to chat to that a little bit?
Yeah, so guys, we touched on the contract side of things. I don't want to give you any legal contract or any of that kind of advice, for obvious reasons, 'cause I don't want you to sue me for giving or sue buildings, probably get in more trouble. But look, in general, we know where things are going with the world at the moment. Some material price rises, sort of kicking in, and also just general management on site and how that can impact the profit at the end of a job, whether that's material price rises, whether it's just not following up on variations, not tracking your costs, all those kind of things. So really, this is all around how do you protect that profit? How do you make sure your contracts are sort of watertight, what you can and can't do in a contract, and then some of the communication around how to manage the ongoing relationship with the client to make sure that you're paid on time, cash flow, all those kind of things. So super important session. This always gets asked, so I'm going to say it in advance, and hopefully I'm not wrong in saying this time, Jason, but this webinar is recorded,
Mhm.
and you guys will all get
Absolutely.
a copy, right, Jason? Yeah?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely.
But before we get going, Jason's all right with you, mate. I
Yeah.
always say this, and people are probably joining these all the time, hear me say this every time. I did a webinar, we're half an hour in, realized people couldn't chat in the chat box. So if you guys can all just pop into the chat box, that you can actually hear us and that you can actually type in there for me if you can, that'd be awesome.
There we
Oh, here we go.
go.
Attendees can
Great,
chat
great.
with. There we go. I just fixed it. So now you guys can. This is exactly why I do it because I always forget to chat
Hey.
if I ask you the question. So attendees can chat. Yeah, brilliant.
Preparation.
Mate, I did
Me.
this for, I think it was
Yeah.
exact accounting. We're on the thing for 30,
Yeah.
40 minutes or so, and we were asking questions. We thought, oh, people bloody hate this content because no one's saying
Yeah.
anything. But yeah, awesome. And if you guys can, just let us know where you're dialing in from. So obviously the
Mm.
advice from a legal standpoint, um, with Vincent is going to be obviously more Australia specific,
Hmm.
more Australia specific.
Yeah.
So we got Brizzy. Yeah, Ben, I've seen you pop up a few times on these webinars. Some very familiar names that come up when we do these. So
Mm.
it's good to see that when you guys do come along, you go, "Oh, I want to come along again," because clearly the content was pretty good. So yeah, we've got everyone from Sunny Coast, Sydney, we've got Kiwi, Sydney, Vic, Hamilton. Yeah, brilliant. So a nice even spread. Um, there. But just wanted to say thanks again also for Mitre 10 for also sending this out. We work pretty closely with Mitre 10. Jackie and our team manages that relationship, and those guys are really forward thinking in terms of like trying to get good information out to their builders. And ultimately, I think that's what we're all trying to do, from Jason at ProTrade to me here at Build Exact and every one of our partners all around, is that if we all give good advice to builders really often, we hopefully put the industry in a much better position than it was prior. So that's the idea of these sessions, is to give you guys as best advice as we possibly can. But I've probably chewed enough of Jason's slide time up now, so I'll
No challenge.
let him get going.
Yeah, yeah. No, great. And look, the essence of this session is ideally from our time together in the next 6 months, you're in a better position having knowing this content, being across it. than if you didn't, right? And so there's going to be some gold nuggets. Please put them down and look at a way that you can inject them into your business in the next 30 days. So we'll move pretty quickly. Remember, information is useless unless you act. So it's what you do with the content that'll make a difference. So let's look at what we're going to cover. Okay, so the roadmap for today is we're going to look at the reality of what's happening in the global markets. Now, this is not an economics lesson, right? In fact, what we're going to do is we're going to touch on the facts. There is enough noise getting created in the media about what's happening globally. So we'll dive into the facts. We'll look at the impact of the trade and construction industry and how it's impacting your communities on a local level. Importantly, we'll focus on some key actions to protect your margin. And then we'll bring in Vincent, who just specializes in the legal safeguards to give you the right information to get across. So, for those I know, I'll
Just, just,
see.
just, to, just,
Yeah,
just to cut in there, Jason, guys,
yeah,
have a think about some of those questions that you want to ask. If you've got any of those kind of like burning, um, things that you want to ask someone that actually knows this, this particular area from a contracts perspective, just get those questions loaded in. So when Vincent's on, you've got them ready to go. Sorry, Jason.
yeah. No, 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 all good. Yeah, absolutely. Be prepared. Now, there's a lot of familiar names that I've seen on our registration list. So thanks for rejoining. For those that aren't across Pro Trade United, we've been going now for 11 years. Look, we specialize in helping owner operators progress into becoming industry leaders. We've got a dedicated pathway. Typically, business owners join us in one of three areas. Firstly, it's around being able to streamline and stabilize your cash flow and profitability. So it's all about consistency to help you make better decisions. We've got a lot of clients that work with us that want to actually scale, but do it profitably. That's the amount of projects they're winning, the teams they're building, and also their contracts that they're accepting. And finally, and look, it's not often, but we have businesses approach us to build their organization to a level where they can have a saleable asset and can step away altogether from the day-to-day operation. So we appreciate that everyone's in a different position. And when we say the word industry leader, it's not typically the size. Big is not always better, but it's about the quality of what you produce, the work you do, and also the relationship you have with your existing customers. So just a snapshot of some of our customers that we've worked with, currently supporting 160 businesses across Australia, and here to help. So that's enough on us. Let's focus on what's happening, okay, and the bigger picture, right? And so what we're seeing right now is an impact because of the Iran oil crisis. What it's doing, it's putting the number one thing it's doing is putting pressure. 80%. Okay, of our liquid fuel comes from Asia. It's imported, so we've got a real pressure on our logistics. There's no maritime bypass at the moment for the Strait of Hormuz, so there's a closure there, as you're aware of. Now, if that was to reopen tomorrow, information says that it could be another, 3, 6 months, even longer before things get back to normality. And what we know through COVID, particularly with increases, is that they come up, they may stabilize, but they typically don't go back to the way it was. So, guys, keep that in mind with the information. You're seeing it at the Bowser, $3 a litre. Look, there has been a little bit of relief in the major areas, yet you're still seeing those double increases in diesel. And look, a little bit of government stimulus, but that's really uncertain. The RBA warnings, okay, so the interest rate hikes. They're forecasting another couple this year. We're not here with a crystal ball, although the intel and the writing is there. The signals are there for us now to pay attention in our business. What impact is it having on the construction sector? So you're seeing it in your materials, PVC and plastics, 27 to 36%. Your bitumen and asphalt, that's up, and your diesel blowout. We're already seeing from the tier one and tier two organisations, they're starting to abandon those they're starting to abandon those fixed price contracts and move into the cost plus models. Going into a supply level, okay, the shocks don't pass, they just reset our current cost base. And if you haven't reviewed your pricing in the last 30 days or gotten across your numbers, now is the perfect time. So you're seeing PVC pipe, your plumbing supplies, electrical cable. This is the information that's coming through, and this is current as of April 26. So there's a bit going on. right? And it's not just the cost on materials, it's the compounding effect on a number of different costs. What I mean by that, you've got diesel, so you've got your logistics and transports up. You've got postage, you've got your interest rates that are there, okay, and you've also got labor in the background, which is putting some additional pressure. So, in no way, shape, or form is this to incite any fear. This is just a reality check on what's happening and how we can respond. And the word is respond. I say respond versus react because we've got the opportunity to do something about it now and put the right measures in place that we can remain profitable across the next 6 to 12 months. What we're seeing inside of the industry and the community are generally business owners are in one of three areas. They're one of three camps. Okay. We're seeing a percentage that have decided to take some action. So they're adjusting their prices now. They're securing visibility around their pipeline. They're talking to their suppliers to secure their long lead items. We're seeing a percentage, unfortunately, that are doing nothing. I feel that potentially this is just all going to blow over, okay, and there's not going to be any ramifications in the current market. And then you've got on the other side, we've got the delay, okay, and that's a I've got things are going on, right? However, day to day, all my suppliers are getting paid on time. There's money in the bank. We're on top. She'll be right, mate. Okay, is a statement. So we'll get to it, but just not right now. Our encouragement and what we're supporting our clients with is get on the front foot early. So take some decisive action, communicate early and often with your clients and suppliers. So how do you respond? And some great ideas around what we can do to take some action in the next 30 days. So the businesses that will survive and thrive through this period are not the ones that absorb the costs silently. They're the ones who communicate clearly, price confidently, and will get paid on time. And so we're going to look at setting expectations crystal clear from day one with new customers, navigating any pushback with confidence, so price or challenges on site, and ensuring that we're getting paid on time every time. So cash is king in this market. What are the steps that we can do to ensure that we're getting paid? So first pillar, right, set the expectations early. So if you haven't already, brief clients on the market reality before quoting. Remember, it's not your fault. Okay, there is no need whatsoever to apologize. You are just passing on the message of the current environment. Vincent's going to come on from a legal perspective and talk about the material escalation clauses, which are imperative to look at if you haven't already. And the third one, communicate early and often. Setting up communication rhythms on site with all of your customers will actually create greater certainty. Silence creates fear. And in a volatile market, we don't want that. So if you haven't got it in place, one of the things our clients do is every fortnight, they've got a regular meeting cadence with their clients just to get them across any variations, potential delays, and also updates on progress. So communicate early and often. The second pillar, please, if you take anything away from this session today, hold your price. Under no circumstances, do not discount. All right, it will have huge ramifications longer term. There's a way to do it and some framing that you can have around these conversations, as we do know it is a high cost market. And being able to acknowledge this conversation with clients and potential clients is, hey, look, I completely understand the budget is tight. And I appreciate you checking in and asking. This is the reality. Diesel has doubled and materials have increased by 20 to 50%. Due to this, we have had to fundamentally reset our costs. Okay, we cannot discount our rates. What we can do is look at reducing the scope to hit your target number. So not to discount, but potentially working with projects to reduce the scope because we don't want to sacrifice any quality. And the money on these increases shouldn't come from your pocket. Timely payments, we spoke about cash flow. In a high cost environment, cash is king. So a couple of things that you can entertain here is milestone invoicing. So that's breaking down your larger payments into smaller cycles. So you're getting paid more frequently. Enforcing clearer payment terms. Um, if you're doing 30 to 60 day terms, avoid it. Yeah. If we can move to 7 to 14 days, that's the maximum. And enforcing stop work clauses, right? If payments delayed, pause work immediately. And that is a real red flag. So pay attention in the market to that. What to avoid? Yeah. Apologies for price increases, as I've touched on. Over explaining what's happening. It's the facts, and the facts that we've just shared versus the justification. Discounting under pressure just to keep revenue coming through the business. And just keep in mind that you're not the cause. You're right. You're the messenger of the information and the professional there to support and serve your customers. Guys, every crisis has creates opportunity. Okay. And although there's a lot of challenges and we've just touched on those, there's also some opportunities and will be some opportunities across the next 6 to 12 months. So here's some things to look at if you haven't already. How you're positioning your business and your brand. Focusing on how you can present as a specialist in the building and construction industry versus just a generalist, right? It gives you the opportunity to charge for quotes, but also command a higher rate for your work and expertise. Your contracts. Now, we're typically flat out on the tools, right? And working with your business and juggling the headaches in the day to day. There's often not a great deal of time to sit back and review your contracts. This is a perfect opportunity to do that for long-term sustainability. Double handling and waste. The businesses that are the most efficient, okay, are the ones that are really going to thrive in the next 24 months. So looking at ways that you can really get the most out of Build Exact, AI features that have come through the mode, also being able to look at ways to reduce callbacks, those double handling processes that are happening on site, review everything to ensure that you're a more efficient operation. We know that energy efficient homes and products are going to surge. Okay. From what this has done from a resource dependency perspective, economically, homeowners and consumers are going to be looking more and more for these products. So if you're marketing towards them, there is a great opportunity at play.
It's not even just homes, Jason. I mean, even just look at the car market. Like the electric cars are selling like bloody hotcakes. I know that's not everyone's, especially in the trading construction space, it's not always everyone's, you know, favorite thing to
Mm.
be moving to. But like I think in 10 years' time, like that's going to be just even more dominating than what it is now. And people are price conscious. Um, so homes that have the ability to be able to save people money long term is going to be an area of niche that's going to definitely grow.
Yeah, new homes, renovations, extensions, they'll all be looking for energy efficient products. Happy days. Yeah, guys, I've given a fair bit of information in a short period of time, so it's just really now a pulse check, and I'd love you to drop it in the chat box. But what's one thing you've been able to take away so far from the content that I've shared? So if you just want to pop that in your chat box now for us, what's one thing that you've found valuable? And Julian, if you could support just with navigating a few of those comments.
Sorry, this is on mute. Just make sure, guys, that when you're popping in the chat that you change the little drop-down box from host and panelist to everyone. Okay, we've got the manner in which to communicate without over-explaining. I think that's sometimes the one I think. It's that
Mm,
like you don't need to feel guilty by your
no.
cost going up and having to pass that on. Interesting to talk actually, Jason. I'm not sure if you know, maybe
Uh,
Vincent might know it, but
mm,
I'm
yep.
guessing with a lot of people moving to cost plus contracts, like
Mm,
I wonder what that impact has on the banks, lending money. And maybe is there a way to keep it as a fixed price contract, but be very tight on what you're putting in that contract so that you don't have to move to a cost plus? I mean, obviously, if you can move to a cost plus and you can do it, then, happy days. But I know not
Yeah,
everyone will be able to do that.
absolutely. And there's some existing
Um,
fixed contracts that are in place at the moment. I know, Julian, that Vincent will talk shortly around the special conditions in those contracts, and they're ultra
yeah,
vital.
that's the
Okay.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, and that'll be the magic. Hmm.
Yeah, but like I said, I think probably the thing is that it's not always the thing to just everyone move to cost plus because the banks are probably not. I'm not speaking as a lender, but I'd imagine the banks are not as fond of lending to people on fixed cost plus contracts.
Yeah,
And
it's a wary time at the moment. I mean, they're seeing interest rates come up, and they're paying attention to what's happening globally as well. So the insights are there with caution for sure.
yeah, I think as well, Jason. Sorry, I'll come to the comments a second, but I think there's
Mm.
this like misconception, and you guys can let me know if you feel this as well, that every builder just has like Lamborghinis sitting outside. And
Yeah.
people go, oh, because the house prices all went up, all these builders are just minted with, stack loads of money. I'm not sure if you let me know if
Yeah.
you guys feel like people think that
Mm.
about. I
Mm.
mean, maybe some of you guys do have a Lambo parked outside, and happy days if you do. I feel like sometimes there
Mm.
can be that with a lack of education from that customer. They can just sit there and think that the
Mm.
builder is just robbing them, and that's why, the more
Mm.
communication you can sort of you can give and the facts of what's happening in the market, the better informed that customer's going to be. So yeah, we've got act early, we've got don't discount,
Mm.
not apologize. Yeah, so not apologize. Energy efficiency from Matt,
Mm.
holding our price margin, not needing to apologize yet. Same things to the manner you discussed. Yeah, I think that's a really good
Yeah.
point. I think, is not feeling guilty, not over explaining everything. Um, Just ensure the clause included in the contracts. Yep. So James will
Yeah.
come to the contract specifically in a little bit. Review existing quotes that may be close to contract stage. Yeah, that's a spot on one.
Hmm.
Mitch, just to review that pricing. If you've got the supplier pricing using Build Exact, you've got the supplier pricing Mitre 10
Hmm.
turned on, you'll get an option to reprice that, and any price changes will flow through. Adam wants to know more about.
Just to touch on that, Julian, is visibility is accountability. Okay, and you can't manage what you don't measure. And so the great thing about jumping into Build Exact and getting visibility around your margins and what's happening in the day to day is you've got first-hand data to work with. So now's the time to get visible on your information.
Yeah, and if you've got Build Exact guys and you haven't connected your Mitre 10 pricing over, please do that. It'll make your life a lot easier. We still see a lot of people that just go in and say, oh, $100 a square meter and just put pricing in like that. That's not going to help you in the long run. It might be really simple, might make it easy from the estimating point of view, just a thing. But if that price has gone up 10% and you don't know, that's 10% off your profit margin when you factor everything in. And labor prices, even though labor prices aren't directly linked to everything that's going on, labor prices aren't coming down either. So
Hmm. Great.
awesome. We've got a few contract prices in there, contract talking points in there, so I'm not going to dive into those because I don't want to get
Yeah.
sued. So.
That's all right. We've got the man coming on shortly.
Yeah.
So great. So look, we'll keep moving. And what I wanted to do from this session, and before I introduce Vincent, I really wanted to give you guys some 8 key actions for the next 30 days. Okay, that you can put in place. And you've just mentioned a few of them in the chat box, which is awesome. So, number one, around protecting your new work. So reviewing all quotes, update your pricing to reflect current material and fuel costs. Probably even consider putting in some buffers there as well, guys. Okay, just in case. Material escalation clauses, all new contracts is essential. Your existing work, so auditing your current contracts, particularly your fixed price risks and unrecoverable cost exposure. As we touched on earlier in the chat box, communicate with clients now, possible delays or variations. If you haven't done it already, today, get on the front foot. Protecting your cash flow. So your payment terms, 7 to 14 days is a maximum. Enforcing the stop work clauses immediately to minimize any of those red flags and ramifications. And the final one here is get some guidance, get a support network around you. Reach out to a specialized legal firm to review your contracts. And in your corner, have a specific trade and construction advisor or mentor to sit with you and review your pricing strategy and margin. So there's 8 things that you can bundle up and put into play across the next 30 days for you guys to be in a better place. Um, what I know from a session, we're moving quite quickly. We've got a couple of speakers today. Is that there's a lot of information. It can feel like drinking from a fire hydrant. And once you get out of the session, you go back into the whirlwind and the day to day of your business, and that can be quite chaotic. So one of the things we'd love to extend to all the attendees on the session is an opportunity to have a 60-minute review, complimentary. It's personalised for everyone that's online. Okay. And what we do in that session is we'll actually support you on reviewing your margins. We'll identify opportunities, but also where you may be double handling in the business, and then provide some specific recommendations for your business. Complimentary. So a poll's going to rise on the screen shortly. Once that does, guys, I'll get you to just click yes, and one of our team will certainly be in touch. Yeah, so an opportunity to have a look, review, and ideally point you in the right direction moving forward. Fantastic. We'll just give a few more seconds for those that are entering the details now. Thanks, guys. Yes. Great. Excellent. And now I'm going to actually bring in our specialised legal partner and a gentleman who we've worked with for quite some time now, Vincent Berry from Sajen Legal. So I'll bring him up. All righty. Thanks for sharing. Yeah. So look, Vincent tells it how it is, and the great thing about it is he comes from a really practical background. He's a partner and our recommended legal specialist at ProTrade United. He comes with a world of wisdom, and there are conversations that we're about to enter now that I feel it's vital just to have that extra set of expertise and skills. So I'd love to welcome in Vincent Berry to the session. He's probably doing a few stretches in the background and getting ready. No doubt he's not far away.
If you are seeing this, Vincent, you just need to hit that enter. There he goes.
Here he is.
Hi guys, sorry, wasn't aware of the button.
All good. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. Our
So
pleasure.
would you like me to jump straight into what I had on my agenda?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to, share from what you're experiencing on the ground and the practical steps the attendees can actually put into place in their business over the next 30 days to, protect themselves.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me, everyone. So I'll try and hit a few topics. We'll move through it relatively quickly. We don't have a whole lot of time. It's important to be aware this isn't a detailed legal advice. It's really just to prompt you to make sure you're aware of some of the things that you should be taking into account and getting the right advice on those things as appropriate. So don't rely on anything I'm about to say as legal advice. Make sure you speak to your lawyer and get specialized advice tailored to your circumstances. So obviously, one of the key things that's being talked about today is the cost escalation in the context of the economic climate. So I'll be talking about ways how to minimize your exposure and avoid disputes in relation to those issues. So the first one that I know has been discussed is cost escalation rights. I understand that most of the attendees today are probably going to be operating under fixed priced residential construction contracts. I heard just the end of the conversation talking about how that whether a cost plus contract is preferable and how this might affect lenders. The short answer is it's that in Queensland and New South Wales at least there's no restrictions on entering cost plus contracts for residential construction work. But lenders won't like it. It's certainly going to limit the pool of clients that you're able to sign up. Many lenders just won't lend on it. It also significantly increases the risk of disputes. It's almost the rule that for these cost plus contracts that it exceeds what the client's expecting. So I think I saw a comment someone mentioned, it increases admin work for sure. It does. Also significantly increases the risk of a dispute arising. So definitely something that should be considered, but I'd caution you against thinking that you can just completely convert to doing just cost plus residential work. I think you're going to run into some difficulties there in a lot of cases. So I'll be mostly working on the assumption that we're talking about fixed plus contracts from this point on. So as everyone will be aware, without appropriate costs escalation provisions in the contract, builders basically taking all of the risk. And now more than ever, that's a significant risk. So number one, you should be considering including a specific cost escalation clause in the contract. Most of you will probably be using standard form contracts, whether it's your master builders, if you're in Queensland, there's a QBCC contracts, HR contracts, whatever it is. Those are usually okay. Most of them are fairly builder friendly to start with. So for the most part, they're going to be suitable for use, but you can amend them with special conditions that gives you a little bit more additional protection, which I'll talk to in a moment. One issue that we've seen with these cost escalation clauses is they need to be very specific. They need to be objective and able to be actually interpreted. So, for example, there's been cases where a builder's put a clause in a contract that basically just says, if prices go up, we can amend our price. Sounds great if you say it quickly, but it's very unlikely to be enforceable because it's basically an open-ended clause that has no way of actually being interpreted. So courts have specifically struck out those clauses, and basically, if that happens, it's got no effect whatsoever. So you need to make sure these things are getting drafted properly so you can actually rely on them. One example how to do that, you can tie it to some sort of objective, verifiable index. So the Australian Bureau of Statistics publishes certain data on material prices in the building industry. You might look at linking it to that, or if you some other, it could be the oil price or whatever other objective measure there is that you can rely on. There are some specific rules with these types of clauses. In Queensland, you have to give a warning in the contract about any circumstances and where the contract price might change for a fixed price contract, and it has to be specific. You can't just type in a clause number or something in that warning. So that can have significant consequences if you don't comply with that. Victoria, there are a few more restrictions about these cost escalation clauses. If it has the effect of increasing the contract beyond a certain threshold, owners can terminate. There are also some specific restrictions about using cost plus contracts in Victoria as well. I believe it has to be over a $1 million value before you're even entitled to use those. So that's your cost escalation clauses generally, something everyone should be thinking about. And as I said, normally you just deal with that in a special condition in the contract, which outlines what I've just mentioned. Secondly, making sure you properly identify your provisional sum items and your prime cost items. The more that you can genuinely move into those categories, the less your fixed price exposure. You have to be careful. You can't provide unreasonable estimates for those items. So it has to be a genuine estimate of what those items are actually going to cost. And you got to be careful if you put too much in there, it might have the effect of converting it to a cost plus contract, which could have some issues. So it's just properly identifying which items should be PC or PS items and making sure that they're properly described in the contract schedules. Key items at the moment, given that what's going on with oil prices, is PVC, polypiping, but other big ones are earthworks, concrete, anything that's been imported, things like that are usually ones that are really important to have in there. Make sure when you're including those estimates for your PC and PS items that you're getting current quotes. You're not relying on something that you used for a job last year, given how quickly things can change. If possible, try and negotiate with your suppliers and get locked in prices so you don't get surprised with any variations to their price. And they have to actually be defined. You can't just put PS or provisional sum or prime cost items and put to be advised or something generic like that, you have to actually include an estimate in the contracts. So the next thing I want to talk about is again, assuming you're operating on the basis of a fixed priced contract and you've got defined stages, making sure that they work for you insofar as possible.
Hey
Uh,
Vincent, just before you jump
sure,
into something different, mate, if I can just quickly
sure.
there. So are you seeing that people are putting these kind of things into their contract, thinking their contract's great, and then it's coming to a dispute, and this is where you're having to get involved and, sort of say to people what you thought was a watertight contract is,
Mm.
you know,
It's not
sin,
something that
basically.
happens often. It's uncommon for something like that to go all the way to a proper court dispute. So it's not something that's coming across our desk all the time. But yeah, for sure, it's a risk that everyone should be aware of.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I just wasn't sure how much it was happening and how much it was getting,
Mm.
further on down the line. So is that just people solving this earlier on in the process
Yeah,
before it gets?
look, to be honest, there's not a huge proportion of builders that are including these types of clauses in their contract so far. When COVID happened and there was that huge spike in cost prices, no one had it, or very few. Basically, what happened then is it just hit the industry so hard that many builders were just going out to customers and say, "Look, we can't do it. It's not commercially viable. We're asking all our customers to change the price." Some did, some didn't. But yeah, even now, it's not something you see in most contracts. These types of clauses.
Yeah, I spoke to a build exec user over that COVID time, and he was like, "How do I put everything down as a PCPS?" And I was like, "Don't think you can do that, mate." And
No,
he's like, "I'm
no.
doing it." He's like, "I don't care." And I was like, "You might want to speak to a lawyer about what potentially could happen if something went wrong." So maybe we should have had this session 5 years ago as well, Jason.
Yeah, like
Absolutely, absolutely.
it's essentially a cost plus
Mm,
contract if you're
yeah,
doing that. And
no
as I said,
problem.
in Victoria, probably not lawful. Queensland, New South
Mm,
Wales, arguably, but
mm,
you've still got obligations. As I said, they've got to be reasonable estimates. You can't just whack in numbers and say, "Great, we'll charge whatever we want." So there's statutory warranties and implied obligations in contracts that these are reasonable estimates. So yeah, you can land in all sorts of disputes in relation to that stuff.
Yeah,
quick,
Vincent, I've
quick
got a question here
question.
from.
Yeah,
Sorry, were
yeah.
you
Quick
about to go
question.
there, Adam?
Yeah, from the panel from Adam Travis here, Vincent. I think this is a good one.
Mm,
Do material escalation clauses go in special conditions section on the MBAV
yeah.
contracts
Yeah,
down in
they don't
Victoria?
have to. That's if you're using a standard form contract, that's usually the easiest way to do it. Just because they're
Yeah.
already drafted. If you've got a bespoke contract that isn't one of the standard form contracts, you can just put it in one of the standard provisions. A little bit depends on. I mean, the benefit of putting in a special condition is it's more apparent to the customer. Now that can be a good thing or a bad thing. Depending on how you do business or how you see that playing out. Sometimes you don't want to bring another party to a contract. You don't want to bring their attention specifically to a clause because they might, not want to sign it or want to amend it. I would suggest though, for these types of, for these contracts, it's probably better to be upfront and make sure they're actually aware of these things because it's
Mm,
just a mess if they get surprised by a price increase pursuant to some clause that's hidden somewhere in the standard T's and C's. So to answer the
yeah.
question, normally you put it in the special condition section.
Yeah. Great question, Adam.
Anything else on the cost escalation before we keep moving on?
I think that's it for now, mate. We can, if you
Okay,
guys
we
have
can we
questions,
can come
so
back.
we'll just
Yeah,
we'll
Yeah.
just revisit.
We'll
Yeah,
circle back.
that'd be awesome.
yeah. So I was just moving on to the your actual stages for your fixed pricing. So uh, insofar as it's possible to do so, try and spread them out. So having more stages and making sure they're really clearly defined. So you can have issues where there's one of five stages, and there's a dispute with an owner as to whether that stage is actually being completed. And in the meantime, there's a huge amount of it might be 20% of the total price for the works is getting tied up over a dispute, which can take a significant amount of time to resolve. I'll come to some special conditions that we might including contracts to deal that specifically where there is a dispute. But stepping out the stages into more stages just gives you better cash flow. And clearly defining when that stage will be complete reduces the risk that Either the owner, or it's just as often that the bank, if the bank, sometimes they'll have their own QS who comes in and they won't sign off on it. And even if the owner pays you, it just creates a stalemate. So yeah, stepping them out is into as many as you can and making sure they're really clearly defined. It's a little bit more difficult in Victoria. There are some rules about changing. They've got defined stages, so it's a bit more difficult there, but you still can change them in certain circumstances. Uh, Being aware of the bank's processes with respect to their requirements for releasing claims, they're all different. So it can be useful at the start of the project to work out what is their process going to be. Are they going to involve their own QS? Are there going to be any difficulties here, and potentially tailoring the contract to reduce that risk? So I've mentioned some special conditions and some other clauses that you might use in your contracts to reduce this risk. So one of them I mentioned a moment ago about where there might be a dispute as to whether a stage has been completed. Special condition that we often recommend it get included in a contract is like an independent resolution clause or determination clause. Some standard contracts have deal with this to some extent, but a typical special condition will be something like if a builder makes a payment claim in respect of a stage, the owner's got a certain amount of time to dispute that claim. If they don't dispute it, then it's accepted. If they do dispute it, then the parties must jointly engage an independent quantity surveyor who comes in, makes a determination as to whether the stage has been completed or not, or if not, what works have to be done before that stage is completed, and that determination is binding on the parties. So that avoids a situation where there's a dispute between an owner and a builder. No one can agree. You get a stalemate. The works get suspended. Everyone starts, the holding costs go up. The relationship deteriorates. I've seen these things go on for months, and it starts to become a personal vendetta to some extent. So just having that independent party that can come in, make a determination. It can still get sorted out later on in the contract process. So if the owner's saying that there's defects or that stage wasn't quite complete, they can still agitate those issues down the track. But in the meantime, payments, being made, or it's at least clear what has to happen prior to that occurring.
And Vincent, just on that, would that independent person be defined in the contract, or would it just be for that point in time to figure out who that independent
Yeah,
person?
there's different ways to do it. Ideally, from a builder's perspective, if I was drafting a clause for a builder, I would probably put it that the builder can nominate a quantity surveyor to come in and carry out this process. If I was acting for an owner, I might try and say that the owner has the right to appoint the QS. Or a more balanced option is that the both can nominate one, but if they can't agree, some dispute
Yeah.
resolution mechanism for that. So the parties must, whatever, you go to master builders and they appoint a QS or some independent process. Hopefully
Yeah.
not getting to that point. Usually, if you can't even
Yeah.
agree to a QS, the wheels are starting to fall off a bit. But having something in there can avoid that getting worse.
Yeah.
Variations, I'm sure everyone's across it, but this is one of the most common issues that we see, that there's been a good relationship with an owner. There are some discussions about variations that will be done. The works get done. Memories fade, or there's misunderstandings and they don't want to pay for the variations. So just making sure you get the variations clearly documented, in writing, signed off on. The scope of the variation is clearly articulated in there. And if you wanted to, you could look at amending some of the standard terms in the contracts about what the variation process is, about how long they've got to respond, what are the consequences if they don't respond, whether you can suspend the works, so on. Also, you can have clauses, some of the standard contracts deal with this, about urgent variations, or when you can go ahead and do it without a formal written document.
Just to
Another
add to
big
that,
one.
Vincent, if
Yep.
I can add on variations, I was at a Master Builders event. It was around that sort of COVID time, and there was a builder building a fairly sort of pricey home, and the owner was a window supplier, and he said, "I'll sort the window out. My guys will all install it, no problem." And the builder said, "Well, we've already agreed the contract." He said, "Yep, don't worry, just leave it in there. I'll just pay for it myself, and you can pocket the money." A number of years later, the house was sold and there was a problem with the window. And because the builder didn't get the variation done properly, he was up for repairing and replacing that window. So even these moments where you think, "Oh, great, I don't need to worry about doing a variation. Just do a $0 variation. Get something in there." It's just an important
Mm.
lesson, I think, and it was a pretty, nice nice build, so a very expensive replacement for that builder to make. So it's
Oh,
just
it's
a
a, it's
story.
it's a good example too. The windows. I mean, I've had matters where the flashings weren't properly installed in on some windows. It led to water ingress into the internal walls. Long story short, a whole dwelling had been knocked down and started from scratch again because the mold got around the house. So yeah, these little things can have absolutely huge consequences. So yeah, it's a good point. Normally, everyone's thinking, variations just getting paid, but yeah, it's a good point
Yeah,
to from the other
huge.
side of things about
Yeah,
liability.
absolutely. Sorry to cut you off, mate.
No, you're right. Some other clauses or special conditions that should be considered, the default consequences. So if they're late on payment, is there interest that ticks over? There are certain circumstances where you might be able to lodge a caveat over title to the property. So a caveat basically is just something that you lodge it on title and it freezes title, meaning the owner wouldn't be able to sell the property to someone else. They also wouldn't be able to refinance the property. Uh, People hate getting caveats lodged on their property, so often it can be a good incentive for them to pay. There are some restrictions, however, to doing that. In Queensland specifically, you can't lodge a caveat if it's an owner going to be an owner occupied dwelling. So if it's an investment property that you're building for someone and you've got a clause in your contract that entitles you to lodge a caveat, that's fine. But if you know that it's going to be their principal place of residence, you can't do it. Uh, it's important that just because you do work for someone and they owe you money doesn't necessarily mean that you're entitled to lodge a caveat over any property that they've got. You'll have to have what's called a caveatable interest in land. What that means is some form of recognized right in respect of someone's property. In its simplest form, in a contract, you have a clause in there that says to secure payment under this contract, the owner charges their interest in any real property. So it can be that simple, but you need to make sure you get it properly drafted. Final topic I wanted to touch on is the security of payment legislation that applies different acts across Australia, but it's all similar. So this is more relevant for when you're engaging subcontractors and they're making payment claims for the works that they perform. So how the security of payment legislation works, it basically provides a mechanism for quickly resolving payment disputes for contractors and subcontractors. There's a specified process for making payment claims, responding to those payment claims, and if a dispute arises, applying for what's called an adjudication, which is basically just like a very quick process for getting these payment disputes resolved. The key takeaway is that the rules are very strictly enforced. There are strict timeframes that apply to these payment claims and payment schedules. And in the context of the attendees today, most relevant is if you're getting payment claims from your subbies and you're not responding with a complying payment schedule within the relevant timeframes, then you could be made liable to pay the full amount of the payment claim. That's irrespective of any terms in your contract that might say otherwise, and it's irrespective of whether the contractor might otherwise have been legally entitled to that payment. So if you've engaged a sparky or a plumber, they've charged you double what was agreed. They send you a payment claim, which might just look like an invoice. You don't comply with the time frame for responding to that with a payment schedule, so it's 14 days. Then you have to pay them double amount what was agreed. Doesn't matter if you can prove that that wasn't the contract. You could later sue them back in court, but in the meantime, you'll have to hand over that cash. So huge risk where things go wrong and very strict timeframes. So when I say payment schedule in its simplest form, that's a document which refers to the payment claim that's being made and outlines whether the payment claim is going to be paid in full, in part, or not at all. And to the extent that it's not going to be paid in full, outlines all of the reasons that the full payment isn't going to be made. So in that example I gave, it might be the amount claimed exceeds the agreed contract. It might say it's defective, incomplete, whatever else, what are the other reasons. It's very important that if you dispute a payment that's been made from a subcontractor, that you issue one of these payment schedules and it complies with the act and gives all of the reasons that you're not compliant, not paying. Make sure it's properly served, and yeah, make sure it's fully detailed. If particularly for any significant payment claims or when you're anticipating there could be a dispute that comes out of this, get a lawyer to look at. It's very easy to get these things wrong. Lawyers get them wrong all the time, let alone you or your contract administrators. So, and the consequences are huge. I've just had one that went through court yesterday, one of the disputes about this, and the client hadn't engaged lawyers until after the fact. and they're going to have to write out a check for well over 100 grand for a payment that shouldn't have had to be made, but the process wasn't followed properly. So unfortunately, they've got to write out the check in the short term. So that's everything I had. Is there any other specific points you wanted me to touch on, or any other questions?
Yeah, there's a question here, Vincent. That last bit I'm not sure if you saw Jason and I's facial reaction to that, and I'm
No.
assuming probably people on
Wow.
the even though we can't see people's videos, I'm
Yeah.
assuming your eyebrows
Yeah.
going
So
up.
I'll quickly just tell you what you
Mm,
should do about this. It's
mm.
complicated legislation. I'd need 2 hours to go through it all in detail today. And honestly, you're not going to walk away remembering all of that anyway. So the key takeaway from that point is go and jump in your ChatGPT or your Claude or whatever, just as a starting point, and become familiar with the relevant security of payments legislation. So in Queensland, it's called the Building Industry Fairness Act, Security of Payment. Each state's similar, but if you just type in New South Wales Security of Payment Building Legislation, you'll find it, and just ask it to summarize what the process is for payment claims, payment schedules, adjudication. There are other matters that the legislation deals with, but to start with, that'll be really important. Make sure you can, if you've got contract administrators, making sure that they're aware of how these things apply. You'll get some great commentary from the AI, or just Googling. There'll be plenty of lawyers who have written about it online. Uh, so make sure your internal team's aware of it, and if you're concerned about it, get some proper advice on it.
Fantastic. Well, there's a bucket full of gold there, and yeah, we've had James Julian. He's got a great question there. Yeah. So
Yeah, so it's just regarding a clause for late payment, Vincent, that if they have to utilize their overdraft as a builder, the client is liable for the interest-free payments we are required to pay for the late payments, which is currently between 8 and 16%. Is that legal?
Yeah, there's no issue in principle about default interest provisions applying. You can go too far and make them unenforceable. So if you said 400% interest, something like that, that's probably going to be unenforceable on grounds that it's a penalty. But what you've just mentioned there, that's fine. And that's a very common way to do it. Tie it into the interest that you're actually incurring. I would suggest just make sure it's able to be independently verified. Uh, for example, that clause might be expanded on a little bit more to say, the applicable interest rate will be sufficiently evidenced by the builder providing a statement from their lender outlining what the interest rate was for a given month, or something like that. Sometimes these interest rates change all the time, and it can just be a mess about how to calculate them. So just making sure that, just have a think about, okay, if we had to rely on this, how do we prove it? Because it's one thing to have a clause that says you can do that. It's another thing to actually prove it and avoid ongoing disputes about what the appropriate rate is. So as long as you can do that adequately, yeah, there's no reason that isn't enforceable.
Brilliant.
Might
Thanks
cause
for that.
issues with lenders. So if the borrower, sorry, if the owner is relying all the money from the bank, the bank's probably not going to pay it. So yeah, just be aware of that.
Yeah. I mean, it seems, Vincent, from what I'm gathering, a lot of this stuff is you can't just say something. You have to say something based on, a particular source, whether it's a statement or whether it's I think you mentioned.
It just so there has, if you want to enforce a term of a contract, it has to be sufficiently clear that it is capable of being interpreted by the parties and by a court. Otherwise, it's no good. Now, with the interest stuff, I mean, a more simple way to do it is you just nominate a fixed interest rate, 10%, 12%, 17%. That's fine. But if you want, you're essentially absorbing some risk there as well, because if your interest rate goes up to
Uh-huh.
17%, you're copying it. So what you've just mentioned there is essentially a cost escalation type issue for interest rates. Makes it a bit more complicated, but it means you're not exposed to any interest rate risk.
So for James's example, it would literally just be, yeah, this is the escalation for extra payments that need to be made, and it's based on the current statement that I have from my bank at that point in time on what the current interest rate is, and yeah,
Yeah, and you might even make it, if the facility, if the interest rate's changing all the time, you might just say, look, the interest rate that was applicable at the start of the month will be relied on for calculating the interest of the entirety of the month, or the more simple it can be in terms of the calculations, the better.
yeah, awesome. And then Pacific Blue, Jason hasn't realized that he keeps on sending messages in the chat to hosts and panelists only. So yes, the
ah,
video of
fantastic.
this will be shared.
Pacific Blue, I responded to your question with
Yeah.
absolutely. So we'll be sharing that out. So yeah, Thanks, Julian. Guys, any more questions for Vincent? While we've got the guru here online.
Jace, there was a question above.
Hmm.
I'm going to pronounce this horrendously, but the force majeure clause. I had a quick Google of what that was, and it looks like a sort of a natural disaster or something that was unpredictable to happen. Can you maybe talk about that, Vincent, if that's possible?
Yeah, I think Jason and I were discussing this one the other day. Force majeure is it's a bit of it was a big one for COVID as well, because obviously all sorts of things happened which prevented parties from complying with contracts, and it became a very hot topic for discussion. Basically, how a force majeure clause applies is if there are some extenuating circumstances that are outside the control of the parties, which prevents the parties from complying with their obligations under the contract, then the contract can be terminated. That's generally how it works. So COVID is an obvious example. If it prevented someone from physically going state to state and attending a site to do the works, then the parties can terminate. Now, there is where a lot of parties got in trouble with COVID is misunderstanding how these force majeure provisions operate. A lot of people just understood that if the contract can't be completed, then everyone gets released and everyone gets their money back. The example I gave for Jason when we were speaking is we acted for some large venues around that time that were taking bookings. So people are booking their annual conferences and things like that. Big money getting paid as deposits. COVID hit, everyone had to cancel. Everyone wanted their deposits back, but that's not how the force majeure provisions works. What they provided that is if a party is unable to comply with its obligations under the contract, it is excused from having to perform them, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the party who got the deposit has to refund it. So I'm just making the point that don't assume force majeure means it all goes back to the start as if nothing ever happened. What's important is the specific drafting of the force majeure clause in there. So, I mean, you can have it whatever might suit your purposes. So it might be that if one of these, say there's some material that just isn't available because of what's going on with the international trade or whatever, you might say that we can suspend the works for a certain amount of time or terminate the contract, and this is how that will all operate. So yeah, it is an important thing to be aware of. It's just important that just having a force majeure clause, don't assume that's sufficient. You have to consider what it actually says and how it operates.
God, there's a lot you need to know, mate, isn't there? Like
Wow.
law was my best subject in school, and
Hmm.
I'm the more I hear how much you guys need to know, the more happier that I decided that I didn't take all that brain
Mm.
knowledge or have to learn all that.
Yeah, yeah. There's a couple of quick ones here. So Polar Build was just interested to know if the legal advice that's been discussed is based on Australia and not NZ. So will it differ
Yeah,
quite a
look,
bit in the yeah.
it's mainly Australia based. Look, New Zealand has very similar
Mm.
legislation. A lot of the stuff that I've been talking about is contractual based, so like what's called common law, which is it all came from England, most of it originally to New Zealand and Australia. So a lot of it's going to be very similar. The legislation is a bit different, but most of what I've been saying has been fairly generic across the Australian states anyway. It's going to be similar in New Zealand, but you should get some specific advice about how the New Zealand legislation might apply to specific circumstances.
Fantastic. And we look, Vincent, before we work out, how, because we've had a great audience stick with us throughout this session. So really keen to look at how they can connect with you and get some additional advice. James has just asked again what that clause was called.
The force majeure clause, or
Yeah.
which one specifically?
So James Walmsley was just asking on that previous statement what that was called.
Yeah, so that's a force majeure clause.
Yep.
Again,
Typically, it's already
in
popped in.
plain English,
Yeah.
a clause that
Beautiful.
allows the parties to get out of the contract if there are
Yeah.
some circumstances outside of their control that prevent them from being able to comply with the contract.
Fantastic. Well, a wealth of wisdom. I've learned a stack in a short period of time, Vincent. So thanks for being so open with this content. And for those listeners that have participated that want to get in touch with you or just get some more information, how can you help them?
Yeah, look, anyone who's got questions about anything we've talked about today, feel free to get in touch. Jason, you've got my details somewhere available for
Yep.
certain contractors. For ProTrade members, we also offer a complimentary contract review at a high level. So if you want, if you've got any of these specific clauses that you might need inserted, or you've got something you're not quite sure if they'll stand up in court, flick them through. We'll have a quick look. We'll identify the high level issues and let you know whether it's something that you should be spending a bit more time on.
Fantastic. And there's a poll up, guys, now. So if you'd like a complimentary contract review, yeah, what a great opportunity to connect with Vincent and get some guidance there. Please do.
Yeah, Vincent, I'll be keen
Fantastic.
to chat to you as well about maybe doing some more with Build Exact
Mm,
audience as well.
Mm,
sure.
That was a really good session. I think some real
mm.
surprises from my point as well. Like I think we always try and think that the law is going to be fair, and I think it's who effectively covers their backside the most, and in terms of what it seems
Mm.
like anyway. You can probably comment on that, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's that's one thing I usually say to clients when they come in and there's a dispute that's already arisen. I say, forget about fair. It's not how it works. It's about what the law says, how you can evidence your position. So yeah, leave fair at the door.
yeah. Is it there's the movie that has a famous quote or something like that? It's like it's not what it is. It's what you can argue in a court of law or something. Is that
Yeah,
the
yeah.
quote?
Yeah, it's not it's yeah, it's what you can prove. I'm trying to remember the movie. I know what you're talking about
Yeah, it
though.
might be Law Abiding Citizen actually. It might be Denzel Washington. I think is it him in
Hmm.
was him in that movie?
No, it's
Maybe I'm wrong.
Jamie Foxx, I think.
Jamie Foxx. That's it. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Great film, by the way.
So, and Julian, I'm interested to know from a Build Exact perspective, because a lot of customers have attended. Any recent insights that will support them in this current environment, and how can your customers get in touch for some additional training to get up to speed?
Yeah, so there should be a poll coming up in a second there for people.
Yep.
Just for some context about what you might want to learn if you are existing Build Exact user. If you're not an existing Build Exact user, just maybe add in that you still want to hear from us. So we've implemented AI tools into the software. The key benefit that I always talk about is not, I don't think it's necessarily what Build Exact really sort of we're aiming for, but this is how I frame it. We have might attend price files clicking into Build Exact, and it's great, up-to-date pricing, gives you access to that data. We still see builders just go, supply and install $100 a square meter, which obviously then has issues later on down the track when it comes to cost tracking. Very hard to cost track against a really rolled up number. The thing that the AI does is it will allow you to create an estimate or create a recipe that has those items in there using the supplier pricing. So Mitre 10's pricing coming in with all of the things in there. You can save those as recipes or as templates and just rinse and repeat them for next time, and it'll just reprice based on what that current price is from Mitre 10 at that point in time. But what it really does is it makes the estimating more detailed, which normally a lot of builders just can't be bothered to do it more detailed because it takes a lot of time, right? So the AI speeds that process up. It's using live pricing. Then what happens is the ability to get an invoice in and say, hey, I've got my item breakdown from my estimate. It's now a lot easier for me to cost track. And from the data that we pulled, around two-thirds of builders that do better cost tracking will receive a higher profit margin on their projects at the end. And that's just a simple logical thing. The more you check your own costs and the more you check where your money's going, the more money you're going to make. And I've said this to the guys here before. I've just started using an app called Pocketsmith. What's a web browser thing on Google Chrome, whatever. And we're already saving a ton more money than what we were doing in previous months. And it's just the ability to see where your money is going at any point in time, which traditionally speaking, a lot of people have just had, an invoice comes in, I'll just pay it out. And that's why a lot of people thought they were making money over COVID because loads more jobs were coming in, so the invoices were getting paid, thinking they were earning more money, but because the cost price and everything had gone up, they're actually losing money. So the ability to have access to that data is super important, and that's kind of why I'm saying the AI is really good because it helps you be more detailed at a time that you probably couldn't be bothered to put the work in to do it. That's what most people are like. So if you are interested in that, you probably already clicked the button now. I'm not sure if you can change your mind if I've convinced you or not anyway, but get in touch if you have clicked no and you can't change your mind. But the AI is going to help a lot of people. At the moment, it's just there from a prompting perspective, and I think it's next month it's coming out. You're going to be able to load the plan in, so you're going to be able to do a prompt, load the plan in. It's going to be able to read the plan, do the estimate for you. And then when it comes out like a chat GPT, you can re-prompt it again as a chat window. So we're looking at about 3-4 minutes to create an estimate for a Renault, for example, as long as you give
How
it.
good?
It's insane, mate. Like I tell people this and they oh, I don't believe you. And they come over and I'm like, there you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be perfect, but it gives you the bones to do it. And I think for a lot of people that the bones is the hard part. Once you actually get into the
Mm.
nitty-gritty, it's where it becomes tougher. Specifically, I'm not sure if you were throwing that to me or not, but Build Exact, we're the software estimating job management software. And yeah, you can connect all your Mitre 10 pricing directly in there. And the idea is that you save that template 2 months down the line, you're doing another single story new build, you go in, anything you've selected from Mitre 10, it'll come up telling you the price has changed. Hit reprice and it'll update.
Yeah. And the one for managing the home expenses and the budgeting,
Oh,
if
sorry, that's probably what
yeah,
Sid
that
was
that
talking
was
about. Sorry.
Pocketsmith. Yeah, yeah, that's okay.
Pocket
Yeah,
Smith. I used one
yeah.
before. I think
Mm,
um,
mm,
it was it might be I want to say We Money, but it probably wasn't We Money.
mm.
It was awful for tracking expenses, and it put so much manual work on me. But this one, it has all the bank feeds in there, so it'll bring all
Mm.
your um your transactions in, and then yeah, you can make your own categories and everything. It's yeah, it's amazing. Sitting there like particularly was asking about Build Exact, like he didn't like I hadn't been talking about Build Exact the whole time, the whole time.
Fantastic. Guys, well, I just want to acknowledge everyone for allocating the time today, to work on the business. We're in a world where there's a lot happening, there's a lot of moving priorities. So thank you for being generous with your time to check in, to learn, to get across what's current. And remember, it's the information, it's what's implemented into the business in the next 30 days that it's going to protect and set the scene for a solid finish for 2026. So yeah, thanks for jumping on. Thanks very much, Vincent, for being really
Yeah,
open and
thanks, mate.
and and, and forthcoming with your time and expertise.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
Julian,
And
the master.
yeah, so guys, if you have seen me for a bunch of these webinars at Build Exact, I am leaving Build Exact next week. So this is kind of a goodbye from me, and hope that if you have been on a few of these sessions, you've enjoyed them. Jason and I and every other partner that comes on board to present, we work really hard to get these content really informative and valuable for you guys. So I appreciate you all coming on. If you've seen me before, it might be your first time, who knows? But yeah, I appreciate all the support and everything in coming along to these sessions over the past few years.
Thanks for your work behind the scenes, Julian. One of the things I will acknowledge before we wrap it up is your commitment and dedication to ensuring that the network and the community get value from these sessions. Spend a lot of energy and a lot of time ensuring we're delivering the right information at the right time. So, um, thanks for the collaboration and supporting the community and the work you've done throughout Build Exact. It's
Thanks,
been
mate. No, I
remarkable, mate.
appreciate it.
Awesome. It's a wrap.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Look out
Cheers.
for the recording, guys, and best of luck. Thank you.